They say money can't buy happiness, but my family seemed convinced it could buy respect. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who should love you unconditionally are the ones who hurt you the most. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the mahogany dining table as I smoothed my simple black dress. Thanksgiving at the Peterson house had always been a performance, but this year felt different. There was electricity in the air, the kind that precedes a storm. "Ellie, darling, you look tired," my mother Carol said, adjusting her pearl necklace. "All that stress from your little wellness blog must be exhausting." The way she said little made my chest tighten. My father Richard carved the turkey with surgical precision, his Rolex catching the light. He'd built Peterson Industries from the ground up and never let anyone forget it. Success was his religion, and profit margins were his prayers. "Actually, Mom, the blog's been doing really well. We just hit 50,000 subscribers and—" "Oh, honey," Jessica, my younger sister, interrupted with that laugh like breaking glass. She tossed her highlighted hair, her diamond tennis bracelet sparkling. 50,000? That's adorable. Chad's startup already has venture capitalists knocking down his door. Real money, you know? I glanced toward the kitchen where Liam was helping the caterers. Even from across the room, I could see the tension in his shoulders. My family had perfected the art of making him feel invisible while simultaneously judging everything about him. "Speaking of real money," Dad said, setting down his carving knife with a deliberate clink, "I ran into Marcus Vance at the club yesterday. Harvard Law, just made partner at Whitman and Associates. Drives a new Tesla, lives in that beautiful colonial on Elm Street." My stomach churned. "Dad, I'm married, happily married." "To a man who drives a 10-year-old Honda and works at some nonprofit," he replied dismissively. "Community development," I said quietly. "Liam helps build affordable housing and—" "Charity work," Jessica chimed in. "How noble. Though I suppose someone has to help the less fortunate, right? Speaking of which, how are you two managing financially? I mean, with your blog hobby and his charitable pursuits?" The words stung because they carried just enough truth to wound. We weren't struggling, but we weren't living the lifestyle my family considered acceptable. "We're fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Fine," Mom repeated, as if tasting something bitter. "When I was your age, I had already married your father, had you, and was hosting charity galas. Fine wasn't in my vocabulary." Chad, Jessica's fiancé, leaned back with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. "You know, Ellie, if you ever want to get serious about business, I could introduce you to some real investors." "The problem isn't opportunity," Dad interrupted. "The problem is ambition. A man who's content driving a Honda at 35 isn't going to suddenly develop the killer instinct needed for real success." I felt Liam appear beside me, setting a gentle hand on my shoulder. For a moment, I thought he might defend himself. Instead, he just squeezed gently and began clearing plates. "Oh, Liam," Jessica said with exaggerated sweetness, "you don't have to do that. We have people for that." "It's no problem," he replied evenly. "I don't mind helping." "How wonderful," Mom said, "so domestic." The condescension dripped from every syllable. I watched my husband being dismissed as if he were invisible. "You know what your problem is, Ilara?" Dad used my full name when delivering what he considered profound wisdom. "You settled. You could have had anyone, done anything, but you chose comfortable over ambitious." Jessica reached for the wine bottle and somehow managed to splash red wine across my sleeve. The dark liquid soaked into the fabric immediately. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, but her eyes held no remorse. "Though honestly, that dress looks like it came from Target anyway, so maybe it's an improvement?" I stared at the stains spreading across my arm, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, just cracked, like ice under pressure. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of 3 years of small cruelties, casual dismissals, and calculated humiliations. "I need some air," I managed, walking toward the door, with Liam close behind. The November air bit at my skin, but it felt cleaner than the atmosphere inside. We stood on the front porch in silence. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "For what?" "For them, for all of this. You don't have to apologize for other people's behavior." The front door opened, and Dad stepped out. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Ilara. Running away when things get difficult. How do you expect to handle real challenges if you can't even manage a family dinner?" "What challenges, Dad? The challenge of sitting still while you insult my husband? Wanting better for your daughter is cruelty? Pointing out obvious truths is cruelty?" "Yes," I said, and my voice was stronger than I'd expected. "Yes, it is." Before he could respond, the sound of a car engine made us turn. A sleek silver vehicle was pulling into the driveway, its lines elegant and unfamiliar. The car door opened, and a man stepped out. It took me a moment to realize it was Liam, but not the Liam I knew. This version wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than our monthly rent. His hair was styled differently, slicked back in a way that made his jawline look sharper. more authoritative. "Sorry I'm late," he said, his voice carrying a different quality, more commanding. "Had to take a call from the team in Silicon Valley. They just closed the Cyberdyne acquisition." Dad's face went pale. Cyberdyne Systems was a tech company he'd invested in heavily 2 years ago, only to lose nearly everything when it went under. "Cyberdyne?" Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Liam nodded casually. "Sterling Ventures picked up the assets and the core team. Should be an interesting rebuild." He looked at me with eyes that held secrets. "Ready to go back inside, honey?" We walked back into the house, but everything felt different. The way Liam carried himself, the expensive cut of his clothes, the casual mention of acquiring companies. My family stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. "Liam, that's a beautiful suit," Jessica managed. "Is it new?" "Tom Ford," he replied simply. "Had to look presentable for the Forbes interview yesterday." "Forbes?" Mom's voice cracked slightly. Liam pulled out his phone and handed it to me. On the screen was the Forbes website, and there, under 30, finance, was a professional photo of my husband. The caption read, "Liam Sterling, founder of Sterling Ventures, manages a portfolio worth $2.8 billion. The silence was deafening. I looked up from the phone to find my entire family staring. "$2.8 billion?" Chad whispered. "The fund's assets," Liam clarified modestly. "We focus on companies that can make money while making a difference." Dad was opening and closing his mouth like a fish. "But your job? The nonprofit?" "Sterling Community Development is one of our portfolio companies," Liam explained patiently. "I founded it to handle the housing projects, but it's just one piece. We also own stakes in 3 renewable energy companies, 2 educational technology firms, and a sustainable agriculture startup about to go public." Jessica looked like she might faint. "But you drive a Honda." Liam shrugged. "It's reliable, though I did pick up the Lucid Air outside for client meetings." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. He looked at me with such tenderness. "Because you loved me when you thought I was just a guy who cared about affordable housing. I wanted to make sure that wouldn't change." The weight of his words hit me like a physical blow. While my family had been dismissing him, he'd been protecting our relationship from the very thing they worshipped. "How long?" I asked. "I started Sterling Ventures 4 years ago, right after we met. Made my first major return 2 years ago." 4 years. He'd been building an empire while my family treated him like a failure. I looked around the room at my family's shocked faces. "For 3 years, you've all treated my husband like he was beneath you. You've made jokes about his car, his clothes, his job. You've made me feel ashamed of the man I love." "Ellie," Mom started, but I held up my hand. "And the whole time, Liam was more successful than any of you ever dreamed of being." Chad found his voice. "Maybe we could set up a meeting? I have this startup." Liam's voice was firm. "I don't invest in people who treat others poorly. Character matters more than potential returns." "Mr. Peterson," Liam said to my father, "with respect, your daughter is the only reason I'm having this conversation at all. She's spent years defending a family that has never once asked if she's happy." I felt something shift inside me. He's right. In all these years, not one of you has ever asked if I'm happy. "Of course we want you to be happy," Mom protested. "That's why we push you." You push me to want what you want. There's a difference." Jessica exploded. "This is bullshit. You let us think he was some loser when he's worth billions?" "You made yourselves look like fools," I replied. "I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." "I think we should go," I said to Liam. As we walked toward the door, Dad called out desperately, "Alara, wait. Family is family." I turned back one last time. "You're right, Dad. Family is family. But respect is earned, and love without respect isn't really love at all." 6 months later, I sat in a coffee shop, typing on my laptop, when my phone buzzed. My blog post had just hit 1 million views. "When Love Comes with Conditions" had resonated with people in ways I'd never expected. My wellness brand had evolved beyond simple blog posts. We were launching products focused on emotional wellness, on setting boundaries, on finding peace in difficult relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's rejection had become the foundation for my greatest professional success. Liam appeared beside my table, carrying coffee and wearing casual clothes. "How's the response?" "Overwhelming, good overwhelming. I think we're going to need a bigger team." My phone buzzed with a call from Mom. I'd been getting calls from various family members for weeks, ever since Liam's success had made its way through their social circles. I declined the call. "No regrets?" Liam asked. "Not about that. Maybe some regrets about how long it took me to see clearly." Another notification popped up, an email from Forbes, asking if I'd be interested in being featured in their Self-Made Women series. 6 months ago, I'd been sitting at that dinner table, feeling ashamed of my life. Now I was building something meaningful, something that helped other people find their own strength and worth. "You know what the best part is?" I said to Liam. "What's that?" "I don't need their approval anymore. For For the first time in my life, I don't need anyone's approval except my own. 1 year later, I stood in my own company's conference room, looking at quarterly reports. Wellness by Alara had grown beyond my wildest expectations, not just in revenue but in impact. We'd helped thousands of people set healthier boundaries and value themselves more fully. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Saw the article in Fast Company. Proud of you. Can we talk? I showed it to Liam. What do you think? I think she's learning. Slowly, but she's learning. Are you ready for that conversation? I think so, but it'll be on my terms, not theirs. That evening, we sat on the balcony of our penthouse, sharing wine and watching the sunset. Below us, the city hummed with activity, with dreams being pursued and lives being lived according to countless different definitions of success. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd told you about the money from the beginning? Liam asked. Sometimes. But I think this was better. I needed to learn to value myself before I could fully appreciate what we have. And what do we have? I considered the question, looking at this man who'd been patient enough to let me find my own strength, successful enough to build an empire, and wise enough to know that the most important investments are in people. We have a partnership built on authenticity. We have success measured by impact, not just income. We have love that doesn't come with conditions. I paused, thinking about the family dinners I no longer attended, the approval I no longer sought. And we have the freedom that comes from knowing our worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. He raised his glass to mine, to building something better, to building something real. As we clinked glasses, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, sitting at that terrible dinner table, feeling ashamed of her life and choices. She couldn't have imagined this moment, this success, this peace. The transformation hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. Sometimes you have to lose people to find yourself. Sometimes you have to disappoint others to become who you're meant to be. And sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you, it's becoming so authentically successful that their opinions become irrelevant. Tomorrow, I would call my mother back. We would have a difficult conversation about respect and boundaries and what it means to love someone unconditionally. Maybe she would understand, and maybe she wouldn't. But either way, I would be fine, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. The only approval that really matters is your own.